Perfect.
Okay, so just really quickly, I'm Luz Casquejo Johnston. I am the co-director of the Center for Environmental Literacy here at the at St. Mary's in California. I'm new to this position. I was asked to join in July of this year. My position here actually is assistant professor in the Montessori Teacher Ed program. This fits really nicely into my expertise because Montessori teacher education is all about holistic learning and integrated structures, and also really rooted in the child in the natural world. So it fits. So that's a little bit about me. And whoever would like to pop in, go ahead and do that.
Okay, my name is Eileen Gumbosi, and I'm from Ripton, Vermont, where Robert Frost lived and worked. And schools, I'm in the public school system currently. I also teach at a private school, and we very much have a focus of art and nature. I am an art teacher. I teach mostly K through 6, although I do some workshops with high school students. And also disabled adults currently. And I moved here from Washington State, the Seattle area, where I also was very much involved with nature and art melded together. So very, like you were saying, a holistic focus. And yes, so just an update of River of Words today for me.
I'm Anne, and I'm in California. I work in Richmond, but actually I live really close to St. Mary's. I grew up in Lafayette, and so I'm very familiar with the area. I work for a nonprofit called the Watershed Project, and we do environmental education. So often it's very kind of STEM-based or science curriculum, but we also are looking for ways to kind of incorporate other disciplines, really take an interdisciplinary approach. So I'm an informal educator, but we work with teachers within classrooms, and we also take students on field trips to local regional parks, and it's all ages K through 12, mostly in kind of underserved communities.
Great, thank you.
This is Lauren Latondra. I'm the executive director of the Carmel River Watershed Conservancy. We do a lot of watershed education programs with students all the way from about 3rd grade up through high school. And we're also sponsoring the California Wildlife Day, and there'll be events all over California. We're down in Carmel, and we're going to have an event here, and there'll be events all over the state of California to celebrate California wildlife, something good for a change out of the political system.
Yeah, and
Yeah, it was a resolution that was passed by the state Senate and Assembly, so unanimously, which was great. So that's what we're up to, and we will have a art contest, a poetry contest, and a sort of poster session contest for all the kids in different grade levels. So should be fun. And I saw what you are doing, and I thought it fit perfectly.
Yeah, so we'll talk a little bit about how to use the curriculum. So I also want to make sure that everybody received the electronic version of the Watershed Explorer. Were you all able to get that?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
No, I didn't see it. I'm sorry. Was it sent in an email?
Yes, it was attached to an email.
If you go to the email,
that Maureen's going to come over.
I sent out an email about a couple of minutes ago, right before the meeting. If you go to that email, it should be an attachment.
Okay, awesome. I got that email. Okay.
All right. So if you pull that up and you go to that attachment, you should be able to open it, because Luz is going to be referencing some lessons inside the guide. So if you want to follow along with the curriculum, you can. That's just
okay. Can I do that in tandem to our chat?
Yes, you should be able to. You should be able. Your camera is still going to work, but you should be able to still open up Windows on your own computer, and that's not going to be shared with us. In order to share, you have to actually hit share. Like I'm actually going to do a nice segue. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and then I'm going to go into the PowerPoint, and we'll go from there.
Okay, I have it. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, so what you should hopefully be seeing now is my Google slide presentation. And I'm just going to quickly go through what the River of Words is, where Center for Environmental Literacy, and our hope for the contest as it grows. So this is a brief bio. You can sort of take a look at that here. The River of Words was founded in '95 by Pam Michael and a poet laureate at the time, Robert Hass. And Robert Hass, when you are the poet laureate, you're to come up with a far-reaching project that engages young people in your art form. So in order to do that, Robert Hass took the work of Gary Snyder, which he wrote a large essay called What is a Watershed, which is actually also included, an excerpt is included in the Watershed Explorer. So the idea was a place-based way of having children discover their world around them. And that's what place-based education means. It's grounding students in the idea of where do they live, investigating it through science, and then creating art and poetry in response to those experiences. It is a K through 12 curriculum that and we actually also receive international contest participants as well. So this is K through 12, it's United States, it's all over the world as well. And prior to probably 2015, we were training educators. So this is actually the relaunch of the teacher education portion. At the time, Pamela Michael was going out physically to school sites, to councils and things like that. And what we're trying to do is create webinar style online experiences for teachers to reinvigorate the program and use the technology that we have available to us. So here are the goals. Roe joined St. Mary's at the Center for Environmental Literacy here at the Kalmanovitz School of Education, which fits nicely into the KSOE, which is Kalmanovitz School of Education, into our mission and vision, which actually does include helping teachers and students create more sustainable sustainable ideas and also increase their understanding of environmental literacy. So what we're trying to do is engage students in their, involve them in their play space, and also create a holistic education which includes cultural, scientific, and social dimensions. And then the hope again is to go forward with that. When students, so the research question is, when students engage in these type of activities that are integrated across curriculums, integrated into the wonder of nature around them, into art, and into visual arts and poetry, how does it cause them to change as global citizens? How does it cause them to see themselves as as advocates, or also as activists at any stage in their academic life? So so alongside each of the slides, you can see that these are actual pieces that we've received over the years. This is from Elizabeth Argo, age 14, and you can see kind of what we're going for. Can you all see that?
Yeah, so beautiful.
Yeah, so again, like the beauty of this is you see the idea that she understands herself as part of a watershed, and that the water, you can see there's a test tube. So however she engaged with it, maybe testing water, something which I know that they do in the watershed with Anne's group. There's boats, maybe that's recreation, so all kinds of different things. Let me go back to the previous slide so we can point out what's in that art. This one is by Joya Sarkar, age 9, and this is an example of an international winner. You can see in that, oh look, I can use my pointer. So you can see here that you've got a child engaging with the natural world. These children are capturing video and then also still life, and then seeing the integration of wildlife within a watershed experience.
Well, hold on one second. Keep going. Somebody's at our front door.
Oh, okay. All right. So these are the programs. We have Watershed Explorer, and we're also right now in development of a 1 square block curriculum. Previously, we had applied for a grant to expand that curriculum, and currently it's only a 1-page experience. But it does, the idea of 1 square block is engaging students that do not normally see themselves within a watershed. So we're talking about children that are maybe in the suburbs and not really connected to their watershed, and also students in urban centers. So we're continuing to work on receiving some funding so that we can develop and explore that curriculum as well. And then, of course, we've got the annual River of Words contest, which encourages students to turn their environmental knowledge into poetry and art. So here are some examples. Maureen, do you know what these, oops, let me go back. Do you know what those pictures are?
I know that the one in the corner. Oh, let's not do that. I know the one in the corner is Pamela Michael, and she's doing the one with all of the adults sitting at the table.
Oh, here.
She's doing a workshop with educators to try to talk about River of Words, and then I think the other two are just examples of River of Words activities of taking like kids outside into nature, so that either they're exploring nature or the kid is physically immersing themselves in nature while writing and reflecting about it actively. So, okay.
Yeah, we are also exploring a relationship with the National Park Service. They have an entire department. One of the strands of the National Park Service is actually interpretation, which includes everything from signage at the parks to helping local communities engage with the parks, to also providing experiences such as the ones that you see here on this slide. So we're in works of re-engaging the National Park Service, and then also possibly the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts. So just a little bit about the contest itself. It's the River of Words. The official title is the River of Words International Youth Poetry and Art Contest. The theme is always watersheds, and it's designed to help children K through 12 deepen the connection between people and place and fall in love with language, the arts, and the earth. The competition's goal is to inspire educators and youth to go outside and interact, observe, interpret, and explore the natural world. We're going to do a couple of exercises today so that you can kind of see, if you've not used the curriculum before, what those experiences could be. And then young artists and poets are mostly from the US. And then about a quarter of the pieces are by young people interested, representing, almost 30 other countries. And this is a past winner from Sri Lanka, and this is called Colorful River by Sasini Wikramatunga, and she is age 10. So here again, you see the idea of these fish in the watershed and the raindrops. So we have a lot of what Maureen likes to call the continuum of anxiety within the arts. So some are very much based in like, oh my goodness, look at all these problems, what can they do? And then we've got other pieces of art that are more, here's the hope for the future. And this is one of the pieces that I think speaks more to that. Here's what we're hoping happens, is that there's this nice, healthy relationship between the land, the watershed, and also the living, the animals within that watershed. Okay, and I also wanted to bring up just the different categories depending on who you work with. So we've got a number of ranges, and each of these categories will have prize winners, K through 2, grades 3 through 5, grades 6 to 8, And then the category 4 is grades 9 through 12, which is the secondary prizes. In addition, because haiku is such a popular form of poetry, and one that is a nice entree into writing poetry with students, we have the Monkey's Raincoat Prize. There's also a Shasta Bioregion Prize, which is awarded to an artwork or poem by a Bay Area student. We always have an International Grand Prize winner, and that's awarded to an artwork or poem by an international student. And then there's one other category called On Writing, and this is awarded to poems about the art of writing. And this is traditionally about 5 to 10 poems are selected from all of the different submissions that we receive. And the final numbers are ultimately depend on the quality of the poems. So here's another piece of art, and it's called My Precious Water, I Kiss You, by Park Pumpana, and age 15, from Fort Myers, Florida. And it looks to be sort of an oil pastel. So you've seen a lot of different types of styles of artwork as well. So there was some watercolor, some pencil. The first one that I showed was sort of the pencil where the images were within water droplets. So you can see that you can teach art, the different styles of visual art and the different styles of poetry. We don't tell you how to do those things. We just sort of provide ways in which to engage in those types of art, along with exploring watersheds. So let me show you the last 2 pieces of art. Here is Revelation by Patrick Hart, age 12, from Huntsville, Alabama. This is an upward look from his watershed. And then here's also photography. It has been a category, or not a category, but a type of submission that we see. And so this one is by Emily Taylor from Birmingham. So let's go back into stop sharing. And what we're going to do right now is I'm going to show you a couple of, actually before we go along, are there any comments about that brief bio and history of the river, words, and hopefully an idea of where we're trying to go next?
This is Lauren. What's the schedule, or like the timeline or deadline for submissions?
Maureen.
Hi. So
Excuse me.
The upcoming deadline is December 1st.
I'm sorry, I'm on a webinar right now. I'm going to have to give you to Christian.
Or, okay. So
it's so funny seeing Eileen in a warm jacket, and I'm sitting here and it's 75 degrees here in Carmel.
Oh yeah.
Sorry about that, Eileen.
So you had a question about deadlines. So the most recent deadline that we have upcoming is December 1st, and that is for our personal deadline for receiving submissions from the United States. However, what's great about River of Words is we actually have a number of different contests across the country that are also doing River of Words. So we have a really big contest that are statewide in Colorado, Georgia, and also Arizona. They all run their own. They all run their own individual contests, and they sometimes have their own individual deadlines. So for what works for us is December 1st, just because of our school year. It just works better for what staff we have available for our own instruction. But for Georgia and also Arizona, with their school year, it works better if they accept submissions until February 1st. But the idea is that we accept them at this part during the school year, and then we publish an anthology in the spring, and that way before the kids move on and the summer begins, all of the winners will have the anthology in their hands. So that's sort of the timeline that we've designed it.
Okay, thanks.
And then previously, prior to coming to St. Mary's, and actually maybe 1 year into coming to St. Mary's, there was a large awards event that was hosted by the National Center for the Book in Washington, D.C., in their beautiful facility. And we flew top winners, including international winners, out to DC. They had a little bit of time in DC with their families. And then there was an award ceremony at the National Center for the Book. This year, because we're relaunching, we're having an anthology release party. So we're releasing a couple of our anthologies. We will actually award one prize winner, one prize where we will pay for travel, which will be for the Teacher of the Year. So that's going to go to a teacher who has really supported the work of integrating art and environmental literacy into their classroom. So they will come out for that. And then there will also be some, hopefully some poetry and art showings there. And that'll be in April. I think the date is April 29th.
Yeah, it's tentative date.
Yeah, if you're interested, so I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen again, and I'll show you where all of that information lives. So going back, to go into.
If you hit the home button on
Yeah.
the browser. Oh.
There?
Oh, that didn't work.
Okay. Oh, the home button on your browser.
Yeah.
Here we go. So
Yeah.
here's the Center for Environmental Literacy.
And this is
And-
our River Words page.
And this is the River Words page.
Down here is where we have all of the deadlines and addresses for the various contests. Then we have links to local contests as well. So ideally, all of the people in Arizona who are submitting can go immediately to the Arizona website. And we also, just in case, have their contact information and addresses here as well. And then contest guidelines. And we have, this year we just got an online entry form for students as well. So this really, not a lot of teachers are using the online entry form, but this is working really well for individual students who just want to submit, who hear about the contest like on Facebook or through social media, and they are like, oh, I'm writing about this stuff, or I'm doing sketches of wildlife all the time. I really want to submit my own work, and I'm not sponsored by any teachers, so they can just go in and submit on their own.
Okay, so again, you can navigate to the Center for Environmental Literacy through the St. Mary's website. So if you, since I'm sharing the screen, here's the address here. All right, any other questions from that general intro? All right, so let's go on. I'm going to do 2 exercises. The first exercise is the watershed in creating a watershed in your hand, and it's found in the Watershed Explorer on page 191. You can follow along if you have that PDF open. If not, I'm going to go ahead and sort of show you how you do this. And essentially, this is one of the.
Just stop sharing your screen.
Oh, let me stop sharing my screen so you can see the camera. Okay, so I'm just gonna pop down. It's technology, right? It's amazing. So this is the watershed in your hand experience. Very easy to do. It takes about 10 to 30 minutes. And this can be done, obviously, kindergarten all the way up through 12th grade. This particular, you all have your own copies of the Watershed Explorer, but this is also can be found on the student page. So I'll show you where to find these 2 particular exercises on the Center for Environmental Literacy website. So you don't have to figure out how to reproduce these. You can direct students or teachers who you're working with to go to the River of Words website and find the student page and look at these exercises. So this is creating a watershed in your hand. essentially what you're doing is you're going to show them how, what a watershed could look like. So you just take a simple piece of paper, there's nothing special about this, and you just simply crumple it up really tightly. And then what ends up happening is you have this tight ball, and then you're going to very, very carefully unfold it, but not flatten it. Again, the directions are all in the Watershed Explorer, also on the website. So I'm just going to kind of lightly do that. I'm not going to flatten it, because what I want them to see, what we want them to engage in, is the process of where does water collect, where are the peaks in any one watershed, where are the valleys, where would water collect? So if you imagine that water is falling down into this watershed, where is it going to collect? And essentially what you do is, once you have this topographic map, then you're going to mark the high points where the water would gather, maybe where natural rivers would form here in this crease. And what you end up having, this is where we get really fancy, is something that looks like that. So you're going to use these water-soluble markers, and you can see how our student workers have marked where possible lakes would form, where streams would form, the peaks, and then possible waterways, places in where the water might flow. Okay, so you're marking creeks, rivers, lakes. You're also marking possibly where settlements might occur, office buildings, and that kind of thing. You can get as creative as you want. The students can get as creative as they want. So we're going to now kind of take this water bottle and just lightly spray it, and you can see that you can really see that how the water is flowing within this watershed. So at this point then, all the students can do this. They can do this off the student page, as I said, and with their parents. You can do this in a small group. You can do this in a large group, out in the garden, wherever you want to do that. And you can see how you would just lead a discussion of what changes do you observe in the map. So I'll just sort of facilitate that discussion, and you can unmute yourself as you notice any changes to our watershed. What are you noticing? Oh, maybe I can.
Ivan, it looks like you're trying to speak, but you're on mute, so you need to unmute yourself.
Oh, we muted her.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes. So what do you notice?
Okay, I was just saying how it's so cool. The water's just taking its natural path and starting to follow the fibers of the paper, but then it's also taking the natural path according to the folds and the valleys, the topography.
Yeah. Any other?
Yeah, there's a lot more movement of water than they had guessed when they first drew the lines on the thing. I think they can really see how their original guesses about the creeks and the river, how those compared with where it actually happened. So that's sort of cool to see that.
Any other general things?
The water also is making the markers bleed. It's taking some of those parts of the watershed with it as it moves on its path.
Ooh, nice, Anne. That's a segue into the next question.
Well,
are you looking at this?
Well, I have to say that I'm cheating because I'm from the organization that wrote this. You'll notice in the curriculum that it's cited as from the Aquatic Outreach Institute. That was the old name of our organization, the Watershed Project. So we do the Kids and Creeks program where this is from, and I'm now adapting it into a more robust watershed exploration curriculum.
So this is the second question is, what is erosion? So you'll talk about how we noticed that there's some bleed,
Yeah.
different colors. So some of these are, especially here, I think you can see really well that the blue has mixed in with the black of this lake area. And so then you talk a little bit about erosion and what that is. And hopefully on the watersheds, they've also planned some communities. So if they've planned any communities, they can see what happens to these communities and how humans have decided where it's best to settle. So you can have that human interaction with watershed discussion as well. So then, of course, there's extensions that they look at the topographic map of their neighborhoods. They can create an imaginary watershed. They can also discuss issues of land use and water quality as well. So that's just the first one, and adapted from Anne's organization. The Watershed Explorer, some things are things that were created by Pamela Michael, and some things were just things, resources that from partners that we had. So.
Can I just jump in to add to that?
Sure.
Often with the question of erosion and kind of human impact on watersheds, we also talk with the kids, depending on the unit, about pollution and about what else might we find around our homes or our schools. Is there litter? Where does that go when it rains? And kind of the colors can be a nice demonstration of that as well.
Nice. Yeah. Thank you, Anne.
Yeah.
All right. So now I'm just going to move this out. Do you want to? Yeah. And so the next thing can be done with any pieces. I found a couple of pieces. And what I would do with this is the activity in the Watershed Explorer right before Watershed in Your Hand, and it's called the mystery item. So you would just take any item, any interesting item to you, and kind of expose it to the kids so that they could take a look at it and sort of determine what it is. So you probably,
I don't know if it's in view on one.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
So you can kind of see we don't actually talk about what it is. They just are to explore what it is, the textures, the colors, and then guessing what the actual item could be. So this again is about going into the watershed. Maybe if students are from suburbs, they can go out into their neighborhood to find an item. And you just introduce the item to the students on a Monday, for example, and then let them know where it will be, keep it on display. If you're doing more of a one-off situation, you can tell them in preparation for coming to the lesson or coming to the group, you probably would have a bunch of mystery items in case students didn't bring them in, but they're welcome to bring their own mystery items in. And actually, as I was looking across campus, I thought to myself, because prior to coming to St. Mary's to be a professor, I was a principal for 7 years in a TK through 12 charter school in Southern California. And my thought was, I know if I sent children out into the neighborhood that ultimately some of them would bring in trash. Mm-hmm. And I actually would have invited that because it's a good idea. It's a good way to talk about what do we find in our natural areas? How did it get there? And a lot of those the idea here is to train the senses to see found objects no matter what they are, as a way to springboard into some artwork. So there's a activity sheet. So in case you don't have the activity sheet, I wonder if so basically in the activity sheet, and you probably won't be able to see it, the students will just say where was it found, what I'm going to call it. So because this is a mystery item and you as the person who found it aren't detailing what it is or where you found it, this is a whole exercise in imagination. So when they fill out the form, they're going to say where they found it. They don't know where it is. They're going to make up something. We're just trying to get their creative juices flowing. what is it called, what I call it, the description, what I think it does, why, and then they create an illustration to go with it. So those are just a few of the exercises. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you can see where the student page is. That way, again, if you're not in context with students on a daily basis, or if students want to explore on their own, they can do that.
Be right back.
Sure.
Keep going.
All right, so back here on the Center for Environmental Literacy page. So this is actually underneath the Center for Environmental Literacy, River Word.
So we've been working on, this is for the purpose of trying to reach as many students as possible, and knowing that there are some students who, while ideally we want them to be with an instructor, we want the instructor to be able to incorporate some of these exercises in classes and also adapt them to their own, like what they're already working on. We know that there are students who come to us who don't have teachers who are sort of giving them exercises that are about environmental literacy. So what we've been doing is we've been putting a couple of the more adaptable and more fun student-oriented exercises on the website. And we have some of them listed here. We also have art and poetry tips from Robert Haas. He was one of the founders of River of Words. We have two sort of introducing students to what watersheds are. We have textures of nature, which is kind of like just doing like rubbings, and that way you can sort of students can get acquainted to what kind of textures they'd find out in nature. And we do also have sort of a mystery item page for students as well. So we ask them to go out into nature and to explore and to really pay attention to their surroundings. And we have a very simplified lesson for them so that they would be able to, if they're curious about environmental literacy, if they want to create something for the River of Word contest, ideally some of these exercises to kind of lead them to that.
Go back up.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think one of the things that we're really focused on is this piece where, yes, they're looking for a mystery item, but the focus is what's the interconnectedness of ecosystems. So even though you're deciding what that is and hopefully springboarding into some art, either poetry or visual art, you're using that observation to also see how this particular object could work in an ecosystem. So let's go back, and then you can see the other thing. So here's the art and poetry galleries, which I think is also helpful for students to see what some past winners are, what other art students have been able to submit and do with the Watershed Explorer Curriculum. And then, of course, the link to submitting their own poetry and art. So again, this page is just, it's being updated all the time. We have a student worker who is actively and loves this work, actually taking some of the experiences and exercises in the Watershed Explorer and then creating these student-friendly experiences that students can do on their own without a teacher or maybe with a teacher. So it's a place for teachers also can get information if they'd like. So that's sort of the entirety of what we were going to do today. So what I'd like to do, so here are some things that we're trying to move through, and then we'll talk a little bit about just networking and how you would use this in your own work. So we'll just have a short discussion.
Well, I can share from my perspective, the California Wildlife Day, of which you are a partner.
Yes.
We will be putting up on the website the link to your curriculum so that teachers all over the state can access your curriculum we've got about 22 other partners too that are local or statewide. And so I'm hoping that this will give them some really good tools to explore watersheds as well as wildlife. So if you've got anything that connects wildlife to watersheds in your playbook, we'd love to see that, and possibly Ann does too. So anyway, if you can share any of that with us, that would be good, because we're trying to stress the connectivity of watersheds and wildlife and their interdependence.
Nice. Okay, so that'd be great. Just getting the word out. It sounds like having, again, stressing to teachers, students, parents, whoever is interacting with the curriculum, the interconnectedness, no matter where they are. So that's a big thing for us, is that we're trying to focus that in, no matter, to see yourself in a watershed where you live, in your place. Thank you, Lauren.
And just piggybacking, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and just piggybacking on what Lauren is saying, the greater interconnectedness along with that personal connectedness of place. And coming into this session, our meeting, I was a little bit hazy on how I might connect with the other teachers in the school. I only have little tiny snapshots of time with the students each week. And I love the shorter exercises, the topography and the markers. I mean, it makes so much sense as an artist and art teacher to give this visual. So I tap into integrated learning as much as possible, and just looking at our natural world. We have an outdoor classroom, and I'll be doing some activities there. So it's very helpful what you've been presenting. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, and for me, I think I'm looking forward to just kind of looking through this guide in more detail. I didn't get a chance to really dive into it as much as I would have liked to before our meeting today. So, but I think it'll provide some good inspiration. It seems very much along the lines of a lot of the things we're already doing. And I think our challenge as an organization right now, I mean, because everything we do is watershed education. And there are different ways that you can approach that. You can talk about kind of the human impact, like we were talking about. You can talk about how we're all part of a watershed. You can talk about kind of the wildlife in watersheds, which is really the focus of the curriculum I'm currently writing. So I agree with Lauren that would be really interesting to me, and just sort of getting students interested in nature and exploring it by exposing them to it. So yeah, I think that's I'm just kind of looking to refine and focus our different approaches to watershed education, and I think this guide will hopefully provide some good inspiration for how to do that.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that is a really strong part of the River of Words and the Center for Environmental Literacy is that students are looking, when you're in a natural space and you're experiencing that place, there's this fleeting moment of that experience. And what do you do with that? What can children do with that is such a great question. So when we go a little bit deeper, we can see that they're producing this art that really speaks to not only domestic or issues within their own backyard, but also issues on a global scale. So one of the pieces that I'm looking to explore is to see how can we engage students in their places and also create this idea that art can be activism. I don't think there were any of the art pieces, and if you we included only art pieces in the slideshow, but you'll see even from the poetry, when you read these poems, you look at these pictures that children have produced, there's this gut level reaction to it. And I think that that's where art can really be, that's where the River Words and the Center for Environmental Literacy can be powerful, is to help children see this holistic approach that I'm an artist and I can be an activist, or I'm someone who's inspired by the environment, and that can turn and help me develop my art. So I'm currently working on 2 grant proposals. I'm actually working on a lot of different grant proposals. One of them is through the National Science Foundation, and it's the DRK-12, which is the directed response to K through 12 education. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to look at the River of Words curriculum, addressing those next generation science standards, the Common Core. How does the current curriculum engage students with the next generation science standards, the language arts Common Core standards, and how can we look at their artwork and what they're creating to assess their understandings of environmental literacy. So pulling out those NGSS science standards that relate to environmental literacy. So that's one part. What is this doing for their learning of those concepts in science? But then also on the other side is, how is this developing their vision of themselves as artists? And how is it developing their artistic skills? Which also includes expression. How are they able to express what they're feeling in response to these place-based exercises? So that's sort of a really interesting thing that we're looking at. And that the National Science Foundation is a large grant. I don't know if any of you are familiar with grant writing, but grant writing at the federal level is a large, can take a large part of, it is a large endeavor that requires a lot of partnerships. So I'm glad you all are here, because we're talking about Richmond and Carmel and Vermont, and creating these partnerships will be helpful as we move forward with the Center for Environmental Literacy. I'm also doing a small exploratory grant here at the college to sort of engage local teachers in using the curriculum, and then also determining what of the current curriculum is working as far as those 2 scopes. So what's working for current teachers within the River of Words curriculum? How's the art being produced? Helping students have a better understanding of environmental literacy, and how is it developing their skills as artists? So that's actually something that I'm looking to do, and perhaps Anne and Lauren, you might have, and also Eileen, you might all, or Eileen as a teacher, you might want to engage in this kind of work. So we can talk a little bit about that afterwards. So I think that would be really exciting. And I would love to meet with you, Anna, a little bit more to talk about what you're doing. And since you're right here in Richmond, which obviously is never right here because this is Bay Area traffic. So
yes, but I also live in Pleasant Hill, so I'm even.
Okay.
I am right here.
Yeah, good to know. And then Lauren, maybe how we can strengthen. So Lauren, with your organization, so I'm just going to facilitate a conversation. With your organization, it's more of like a hub for the event itself.
Right.
And so are you partnering with any specific school districts, perhaps in Carmel or that surrounding area?
Yeah.
Okay.
Carmel Unified School District. We're basically, and there's several private schools out here in Carmel Valley too. So we're focusing most of of our contest for that day on schools that are in our watershed. But we also are going to be busing in some students from Soledad and Gonzales and Seaside, because we've got some money for busing as well, and bring some classrooms in from there that we've already done some watershed work with, and so they can enjoy the day as well. So that's what we're planning. But I'm definitely going to put in. We have something called useful resources on our website, and it's called CaliforniaWild.net for the others. Anyway, we'll put you down as probably at the top of that as the Center for Environmental Literacy, and a link so they can get to your site easily, and encourage teachers to do that, because a lot of teachers have asked us since we announced this, what do I do with my kids that's watershed related? So you've got the tools.
Yeah.
Yeah.
like on a silver platter. Boom. Here's
Yep.
what you can do.
Yep. You're welcome to come down for the day too. By the way, Lindsay Wildlife Experience, which is in Walnut Creek where I grew up, has sponsored the first California Wildlife Day last year, just a week after it was passed by the legislature, and they're doing a fabulous job. So if you want to go see a local, sort of local, especially for Anne, event, the Lindsay Wildlife Experience is just terrific what they've done.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So are there any other questions? Are there any ideas on how we could support you in using the curriculum? Would it be, so I think what I'll have Maureen do is send out an email afterwards to, if it's okay, to share your information, to do some possible connections, possibly schedule out some specific time with folks as far as what are you doing and what needs do you have. So are there any other questions about what we're trying to embark on? So this is really our relaunch. This is our year to reimagine, relaunch, and re-envision what we're doing. I think the current Watershed Explorer is a really strong curriculum. We know that the River of Words works because it's been in existence since '95. But how can we harness that power, and also how can we engage more teachers in what we're doing? To really, I mean, really the big goal here is to create or help students really develop in themselves that idea that I am part of a watershed and I can do something about it. So how do we create those experiences through the different partnerships and organizations that work with?
One thing you might consider is we've reached out to the California Science Teachers Association, which is a huge organization, and they can spread the word about your curriculum and what your center does, because they have a newsletter that goes out regularly, and they'll be sort of a partner for us too in getting the word out about celebrating California Wildlife Day. And so that's something you might want to consider.
Great, thanks, Lauren.
I have a question. And as far as connecting on a more national and even possibly an international level, I think it's really great that you will be presenting at the National Art Teachers Conference in Seattle in March. I saw River of Words with a studio workshop, so that's very awesome. Because I think it's really important to get the word out to art teachers.
Yes.
I know my main question when I came to our meeting was, no pun intended, can I be an island, so to speak, teaching a watershed curriculum? I taught a summer workshop and we did a whole immersion of watershed art. We had a river, we walked to it, we put long pieces of paper down on hillsides and squirt paint, and we did pebble pendants where the pebbles had been honed by the watershed. Yeah. And it was fabulous. But now I'm back in the classroom, and like I said, I have these children for snapshots of time, and some of the teachers will be working hand in hand with me, some of them not so much. So I was just curious if there are any art teachers successfully participating. I imagine so.
Yeah, so I think we can look in the database and see so we are receiving submissions. The poetry by and large is being submitted by teachers who are in the English language arts field, which makes sense. And the art is being submitted mostly by teachers who are in the art world. So we can see if there are any connections in your area. So do you think, I don't know if you have any sense.
Nobody comes to mind immediately. Okay. In your area. I would.
No, not many teachers even know about the curriculum, River of Words, and I think it's a wonderful curriculum, and I would like to use it more. So even connecting with other art teachers, like at the conference, right, I think will be very helpful. And with technology, obviously, it's really easy to connect with other people.
And I think that was the intent here. So rather than see ourselves as a hub that creates curriculum, which I think is something that could happen. We're not at that level right now. And so it's actually easier to go to the experts in the field and create networks. So the co-director for the Center for Environmental Literacy is Chris Sint, who is the Vice Provost of Academic Affairs here at St. Mary's. He also teaches in the MFA program and is a poet. So his vision, and he's also actually the professor that brought the Center for Environmental Literacy to St. Mary's. So his vision really is about creating networks versus creating curriculum. And I actually also agree with that, because in a Montessori sense, we're not about giving people just the activities. It's about creating for them and empowering them to see themselves as a part of a network. Because if we're talking about interconnectivity within the watersheds, we need to talk about interconnectivity across different geographic regions. So
I'll just also add, so there's a specific studio that is just a star participant in River of Words, which is specifically an art studio, and they produce a lot. They've been submitting to River of Words for a very long time, and I believe that the instructor's name is Shijun Munz. I can send you her name and also her website. But it looks like she has a art studio specifically surrounding watersheds all year round, and it's and all of the work is so great. And the reason why it's so great is because I'm not entirely certain if she's attached to a school or if this is just her own separate studio, but she has students with her throughout their entire childhood. So you can see students submitting their work from when they're very young, and then you can see them improving as their art sort of improving and developing and becoming more complex as it goes on, which is why a lot of their work is really empowering, is because she was able to have students around for a long time. But I believe it's an independent studio, but I can send you her information. Maybe you guys can be in contact, and she can give you more in-depth advice about how she managed to collect those students, or how she's been able to integrate with other teachers in the area.
Eileen, you mentioned you're an artist also. I was curious what medium you're working in.
I'm a painter.
Oh, cool.
Yes. And I just finished doing some murals for the town of Middlebury, Vermont.
Wow. Oh, Middlebury, because we have Middlebury Graduate School here in Monterey.
Yes, I have a friend in it right now. Absolutely.
Oh, who's your friend?
Her name is Becca Cordell.
We have two interns from Middlebury that work with us in doing the student education in the watershed.
Oh, really? So, she's actually from Ithaca, New York?
Oh, that's where Cornell is, right?
Yes, she went to Ithaca College.
Good, great.
But yes, I would be very much interested in networking. And like you said, that's the watershed, the connectedness of water. So to connect with other teachers, I think, is really key. Like if you want to do a whole rejuvenation and a jump start, that would be so exciting to connect with other teachers. And I know I would be happy to facilitate that as much as I possibly can.
Perfect, thank you.
And I actually have a question for Anne and the Watershed Project. So I actually met with some of the people involved with the Watershed Project at the Sustainable Contra Costa event. Unfortunately, we didn't get a lot of time to talk. But I'm just sort of curious, is there anything with because I've looked at your website, and you guys are doing fantastic work about taking kids out into nature and giving them science lessons as well. Is there any component currently in your lessons that has some sort of artistic or reflective stage, maybe at the end. I don't know if like kids do journal entries, or can you speak to what you're currently doing on that? I'm just kind of curious.
Yes. So it depends on what the curriculum is, but we, I think we do more writing than drawing, but kids often, like, we're all fine if a student wants to draw an answer instead of write something. We have them kind of telling stories, for example, of how, trash gets into the ocean for our coastal cleanup day curriculum, and they might, some students kind of draw little comics, or some students, want to write. We do the watershed in your hand activity all the time. We're about to start a new marine debris curriculum, and we're looking for some activities having to do with recycled art for that, particularly for the younger students. We think that would be a cool component. I think our main challenge with all of our programs is we don't get to see students for long periods of time or continuous periods of time. Often we're only there for maybe 2 lessons and a field trip or something like that would be pretty typical. And we see one classroom and do that unit with that class. And then, like, who knows if we'll ever see those students again.
Wow.
So, and that changes with our high school students. We have one very successful program called Wild Oysters, where we have about 7 contacts with each classroom. We see that class 7 times. But then again, it's like it doesn't really carry over from year to year.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of the challenge with us is what is going to be effective and impactful in kind of these, couple of contacts that we have with any given student, and how much can we kind of fit in. But yeah, so we do journaling. We have some art pieces. I think the work you're doing with trying to line up your curriculum with NGSS and the Common Core is going to be really valuable, because that's a big part of what teachers find valuable, and kind of inviting us into their classes is great. We get to do, something really cool and hands-on for our science education. And often these classes that we serve, who knows how much science education they're doing in their rooms. They're proud, who knows how much art they're doing in their classes. We might be the only field trip they get in any given year. So I think that's just really important work to try to tie that into things that teachers already have to do, to try to ease that burden a little bit.
Yeah, I could see perhaps asking those teachers that are feeling that that's a really impactful program, if they'd like to participate in more either web style, if their students are really excited, it's possible that the teachers are then excited and want to do more. So there could be sort of like, how has this impacted the learning in your classroom? Would you like to learn more? And then we could kind of move from there too.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that what we were just talking about with networking is also really valuable. What we've often found, because I know the Watershed Project in the past has done kind of professional development for teachers. We're not currently doing a lot of it, but it can be really challenging with just kind of the time and the workload that teachers have to ask them to take on or anymore or learn anymore, which is why often we're a good kind of first step, because they can just invite us and we do the teaching, we do the field trip, we, pay for the buses, everything. So the teacher really doesn't have to, but we do have a few partnerships with kind of teachers who have been connected with us for a long time. And we're trying to kind of explore how to better, how to expand our reach and kind of make those relationships more sustainable versus just kind of a contact that a teacher might have with somebody in our organization, but then maybe that teacher moves on, or maybe the person in our organization leaves. It's kind of like, how do we institutionalize those partnerships a little bit better? So I think we should connect separately, kind of offline too. I've only, disclaimer, I've been with the Watershed Project for a couple months, so I'm still kind of getting the lay of the land in terms of what the history of our organization and our partnerships are, but we're also kind of doing some strategic planning and visioning for our education department at the moment. So I think it's really good timing to try to line up with some other organizations doing really similar things.
Awesome. Okay. Well,
This is Lauren. One thing I might suggest to you at the River of Words or at your center is to have, one thing we want to do is have this learning stick. I think there's a word called sticky learning, but the idea is that the learning will last beyond the one-time experience that Anne just mentioned. And so having like a sheet that would talk about what students can do to protect the watershed they're in, preserve and protect it, and also embrace it would be really helpful. So if you have something like that, some of our teachers have put that together from time to time, and it's really helpful to make sure that the students go beyond the one experience they might have with the watershed or with this contest and actually do something to preserve and enhance the watershed they're in.
great. Thank you. Well, I'm so excited. It's a little bit after noon, which is, this was set for an hour. Unless there's any other questions, I think what I'll have Maureen do is send out a follow-up email that's also going to include a comment form. If you can help us out with that, that would be great. Also within that comment form, if you can let us know if we can share your information for the purposes of networking, that would be great as well. So I really appreciate all of,
Extremely quick question. Kind of piggybacking what Lauren was saying. Do you do anything with the art or poetry that children send that do not win, so to speak? Because it is networking and communication, but is it display? Is it exhibited anywhere?
So we're working on that right now. We
Uh-huh.
have a warehouse full of 20 years worth of student submissions.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Some specific schools want their work back, and others don't. And in the case of poetry, we're getting away from paper submissions, so it's online. It's more online, and then they can have their submissions back immediately. But the artwork, many students haven't asked for it back. So we have 20 years, and so that's one of the things we're actually working on is how can this exhibit? How can this be exhibited? We have the claim to fame of having the largest collection of children's artwork in the world.
Wow.
In the world. So what are we doing with it? We don't actually doing anything.
Well, we have some plans in the works. We have a specific number that we have found, a specific what it would cost to digitize all of the art. So we have that number, and we have talked about creating a database for all of the work, and it would require some labor, and it would require some grants to be able to do. And last time we talked, we were thinking about going to the Center for the Book About, trying to do that, or going to our own library on campus to sort of help us with cataloging it. So that's the current plan. It hasn't. We're still in the very beginning stages of it, I would say.
And
It's exciting.
yeah, on a small scale, there is a small student gallery of past winners on the website. So some things have been digitized.
All the finalists and winners.
Yeah, it's finalists. And they can see what the finalists and winners, which sometimes can be a little bit daunting. So I think it'd be great to see all of to get that digitized and also cataloged. So we are looking into a project to digitize and also catalog so that it's searchable. We would hope too that there'd be some research. You know, there are going to be trends and themes within the art that'll be interesting to see from 1995 until now. I think would be really
Definitely.
What themes are we seeing now that we weren't seeing? How have things evolved? Is a great research question as well.
This is Lauren again. One of the things we're doing at the event is the students who don't receive a prize, they all are going to be able to, we're digitizing everything we got in a digital form and showing it on an LCD projector on a continuous loop for the whole event.
Perfect.
And then we're also going to let every student that wants to put their art or a poem or poster up on a clothesline. So there'd be a big long clothesline, and they just hook their thing up on a clothespin, and so that everybody's gets to be displayed.
That's great. That's great.
This is just a really, and if you guys need to go, let us know. But there is a group in New York, I think in New York, the Hudson River Conservatory, I think is their title. Their link to their organization is on our website. But just another way that a local organization like Lauren's is displaying and student work is they actually have a poetry trail. So they do just a poetry contest. They don't do any art. But they take students out to river, they talk to them about watersheds, and they talk to them about environmental conservation, and they talk to them about sustainability. Students reflect on the experience by writing down and by doing poetry with their teachers, and they have a little contest just within their school district, and they then print the winning poems and up on these on canvas, and they post them at points during the poetry trail. So for the entire year, hikers can walk along this trail and look at student poetry, which is just another example of sort of physically integrating the art and the environment together, and really it allows doing something else with the students' artwork and poetry than just rewarding them, but actually like putting it up and making it available to the public. That's great.
Okay, so unless you all have any other questions, thank you so much for your participation. It's been a great networking session, and also hopefully you've gotten a little bit more about the curriculum. Thank you so much. We'll be in contact with all of you. And other than that, have a wonderful Sunday.
Thank you ever so much.
Thank you very much. Our two cats behind me enjoyed it too.
We enjoyed them too. I thought, look at it.
All right. Stay in touch.
All right. Thank you all.
All right. Good luck.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.